What if everything you thought you knew about New Zealand was wrong? We imagine rolling green hills, crystal clear lakes, and a peaceful society where everyone enjoys life in perfect harmony. But what if I told you that behind this postcard perfect image lies a hidden reality? New Zealand is ranked one of the best places to live in the world, but beneath the surface, cracks are beginning to show. Did you know that this so-called paradise has one of the highest youth suicide rates in the developed world? Or that its cities are becoming some of the most unaffordable on the planet? Tourists see breathtaking landscapes, locals see rising living costs, hidden poverty, and a country struggling with its identity. So, what's the real New Zealand? Today, we uncover the truth. New Zealand is a country that defies logic. It's one of the most isolated nations on Earth, 2 small islands in the Pacific, thousands of kilometers from the rest of the world. And yet, it has become a global symbol of progress, prosperity, and peace. For centuries, it remained untouched by foreign influence. The indigenous Maori people built a thriving society with a deep spiritual connection to the land. They had no written language, only stories passed down through generations, etched into their carvings and woven into their traditions. But in 1840, everything changed. When the British arrived, they signed the Treaty of Waitangi with the Māori chiefs, an agreement that was supposed to bring partnership and unity. Instead, it led to land confiscations, wars, and decades of oppression. Even today, the effects of colonization linger. The struggle for identity is ongoing. The question remains, who does New Zealand truly belong to? To the outside world, New Zealand seems like a paradise, a country of stunning mountains, friendly people, and a peaceful way of life. A place where the streets are safe and opportunity is everywhere. But ask the people who actually live here, and you'll hear a different story. Living in New Zealand comes with a price, and for many, that price is getting too high. Auckland, the country's biggest city, has a housing crisis so severe that even people with full-time jobs struggle to afford rent. Buying a home? Almost impossible. A small 2-bedroom house in Auckland can cost over $1 million, a price that rivals New York and London. But unlike those cities, wages in New Zealand are much lower. And it's not just housing. Groceries, fuel, and everyday necessities cost more than in many developed countries. Some call it the sunshine tax. You pay extra just to live in such a beautiful place. But beauty doesn't pay the bills. Young New Zealanders are leaving in record numbers, moving to Australia, the UK, or even further abroad, searching for better-paying jobs and affordable homes. The question is, what happens when paradise becomes too expensive for its own people? New Zealand is a country with clean streets, stunning nature, and a global reputation for being one of the safest places on Earth. But if you look closely, you'll see a different reality. Thousands of New Zealanders are homeless, living in cars, shelters, or overcrowded houses. Despite being a wealthy nation, it has one of the highest homelessness rates in the developed world. The most affected? The Maori population. For centuries, Maori land was taken, their communities were pushed to the margins, and even today, they face higher unemployment rates, lower life expectancy, and worse healthcare outcomes than the rest of the population. The country promotes equality, but the numbers tell a different story. How can a nation that ranks so high in quality of life also have some of the worst poverty rates in the developed world? New Zealand's landscapes are legendary. Towering mountains, untouched beaches, lush forests. But this beauty hides a dangerous truth. New Zealand sits on the Pacific Ring of Fire, one of the most seismically active regions on the planet. The land here is alive, literally. In 2011, Christchurch was destroyed by a massive earthquake that killed nearly 200 people and left the city in ruins. Buildings collapsed, roads cracked, and for years, Christchurch remained a ghost town. But that was only a warning. Experts say another major earthquake is coming. It's not a question of if, but when. And then there's the volcanoes. White Island, one of New Zealand's most famous tourist attractions, looked like something out of another world. An active volcano constantly steaming, attracting thousands of visitors every year. But in 2019, it erupted without warning. Tourists were trapped on the island, covered in burning ash. Many never made it back. New Zealand's nature is breathtaking, but it's also unpredictable. Living here means accepting that at any moment, everything could change. New Zealand's biggest problem isn't something you can see. It's not the housing crisis, the rising poverty, or the natural disasters. It's something much deeper. New Zealand has one of the highest youth suicide rates in the world. It's a statistic that doesn't fit the country's peaceful image, but it's a reality many young people face. Experts blame social isolation, pressure to succeed, and a culture of toughing it out instead of seeking help. But why is no one talking about it? In a nation that prides itself on being one of the best places to live, why are so many struggling in silence? New Zealanders are known for their resilience, but at what cost? New Zealand's story doesn't start with European settlers. For centuries before the British arrived, the Maori people had built a unique civilization, one of warriors, navigators, and spiritual leaders. They traveled across the vast Pacific Ocean in massive waka canoes, navigating only by the stars. They spoke Te Reo Māori, a language filled with poetry and power. They lived in iwi, tribes, bound together by their wakapapa, ancestry. But after colonization, things changed. Land was taken. The language was banned in schools. Traditions were erased from history books. By the 20th century, Maori culture was fading. And then, something happened. The 1970s saw a Maori resistance movement unlike anything New Zealand had ever seen. Protests erupted, demanding land back, demanding the right to speak Maori again. It worked. Today, Maori culture is rising again. Te Reo Māori is now an official language, spoken on national television and taught in schools. The haka, once a war dance, is now performed by sports teams, at protests, and in moments of national pride. Marae, Maori meeting grounds, are regaining their place at the center of communities. Maori businesses, artists, and political leaders are shaping modern New Zealand. But the fight isn't over. The question remains, is New Zealand truly honoring its Maori roots, or is it just a performance for tourists? New Zealand is famous for its landscapes, but most people only see a fraction of what this country has to offer. Let's go deeper. Everyone knows Milford Sound, but did you know that there are 13 other fjords in New Zealand that almost no one visits? These fjords are so remote that the only way to reach them is by helicopter or days of hiking. They are untouched by civilization. No roads, no cities, just pure wilderness. And yet, deep in these fjords, there are still traces of ancient Maori villages, places where warriors once lived in complete isolation. Along the beaches of the South Island lie perfectly round boulders, some the size of cars. Scientists say they're natural formations, but Maori legend tells a different story. They are the fossilized remains of ancient voyagers, lost at sea centuries ago. Did you know that New Zealand once had a gold rush? In the 1800s, towns in the South Island boomed overnight, filled with miners from China, Europe, and Australia. But when the gold ran out, the towns were abandoned, left as ghost towns, frozen in time. Today you can still walk through them. Some buildings remain standing, whispers of a past that few remember. New Zealand is often seen as a land of opportunity, but there's a hidden truth about its economy that few realize. Despite its rich land and high rankings in quality of life, New Zealand is heavily dependent on just a few industries. Dairy farming. The country's economy relies massively on milk exports, making it vulnerable to global price changes. Tourism. Before COVID-19, over 10% of the economy was built on foreign visitors. When the borders closed, the economy collapsed overnight. Foreign buyers and real estate speculation, the reason house prices have exploded, international investors buying land and homes, not to live in, but to profit from. Many Kiwis wonder, is New Zealand's economy truly strong, or is it a house of cards? New Zealand is a country filled with stereotypes, but how many of them are actually true? Myth number 1, New Zealand is a peaceful country with no crime. Reality, while crime rates are low compared to other nations, gang violence is rising. Groups like the mongrel mob and Black Power have deep roots in society, and drug-related crime is increasing. Myth number 2, New Zealand is safe from climate change. Reality, New Zealand is already feeling the impact. Rising sea levels threaten coastal towns, and powerful storms are becoming more frequent. Entire communities could be forced to relocate within decades. Myth number 3, New Zealanders are all friendly and laid back. Reality, yes, Kiwis are known for their kindness, but that doesn't mean there aren't divisions. Many Maori still face systemic racism, and immigration has sparked debates about identity and national values. New Zealand is not just a fantasy land. It's a real country with real challenges. So, after everything we've uncovered, what is the truth about life in New Zealand? It's not just a paradise. It's not just a disaster zone. It's not just a tourist destination. It's a land of contradictions, a country where beauty and struggle exist side by side, a place where ancient traditions and modern challenges collide, a nation that wants to move forward but is still haunted by its past. And now the question is, if New Zealand isn't what you thought, what else is the world hiding from you? Subscribe to The World Uncovered And join us as we reveal the truth about the world, one country at a time.